Welcome back to my channel. My name is Tom and I make videos that help you empower your higher self and manifest your dream reality. In this video we have a little bit of a special topic which I actually announced in my community page and also on my Instagram. So it's going to be a personal Q&A to celebrate 10,000 subscribers. And so I asked for you to send in some of your questions that you want to know about me, about law of attraction, about spirituality. And I can't thank you enough to all those who submitted me some really amazing questions. And so it's just going to be a bit of a free-flowing video where you can get to know me with a little more personal depth and authenticity. I want to try and be as vulnerable and honest and authentic as I can, because I always like that. I always like knowing the human being I'm interacting with when I follow someone's work in whatever area of life. So I hope this video can kind of give you that insight, deepen that connection, which of course can enhance the ideas, because all the ideas I talk about and share on this channel are things that I'm embodying and implementing in my own life. But before we jump into it, I just want to quickly remind you that I'm still doing my one-on-one donation-based coaching, where all sessions are 100% donation-based, which I felt inspired to do during kind of the unprecedented times we find ourselves in around the world. So if you're interested in having that donation-based session with me, just head to the link below. Okay, so I've picked 20 random questions that I resonated with the most from my Instagram story and also from my community poll kind of post that I did. So I'm just going to go through each one and answer it. Pretty simple. Okay, so question 1. What has been happening in your life recently? What are some general updates and what have you been going through? So some of you may know, I live in Melbourne, Australia, and we had one of the longest lockdowns due to the pandemic in the world, I believe. And so it just got lifted the other day, about 4 or 5 days ago. But we were in lockdown for 111 days. So 111. But I've basically been living in my apartment, pretty locked down, spending a lot of time with myself, kind of cultivating my own inner relationship with life, with spirituality, building my business, having lots of client activities, and just doing my best to kind of cope under the situations of lockdown, which no doubt you've been doing in your own life. So we've all had a taste of it to some degree. It's very strange, and it can feel quite oppressive, and your life can kind of feel heavy and stagnant when you're not able to fully express and be as you normally wish to be. But I've also, at the same time, had this urge to kind of expand my business and my life, which has been kind of strange because on one hand, everything's locked down and kind of stagnant and rigid, whereas within myself, I felt this urge to express, expand. So I've kind of been dealing with those contrasts of energies. And so by expand, I mean, I wanted to build my first course around the law of attraction manifestation. I was very excited by that. And I also wanted to move houses and get into my own apartment, because I currently live with a roommate. It's a beautiful apartment, nice area, beautiful views. Perhaps I'll show you sometime, but I just felt like living by myself for the first time in my life, fully by myself. It just felt like something I was being called to do. But I thought I'll build my course and then we'll get into moving houses. That's how I had it in my mind. But what happened was, and this is one of the challenges or recent things I've been going through, is that when I tried to build this course, I planned it all out, I tried to film it, and every time I filmed, there was some kind of error with the camera, with the equipment, with the microphone, or some kind of interruption, whether it was something my roommate was doing, whether a parcel came up and the postman buzzed up the building exactly while I was filming a take and kind of took me out of that state of flow. But I reached this point a few weeks back where I realized this course is not going to be built in this house. And as soon as I had that insight, I felt liberated, and I knew I had to kind of tell my roommate, tell my family I'm going to move into my own apartment and start looking. So I've just started that process and it's still unfolding now. I currently don't have a place that I'm moving to, but I'm just kind of putting it out there to the universe, and it's already kind of flowing pretty quickly. So it will happen over the next weeks, who knows when. But that's some of the updates I've been experiencing in my life. Question number 2 is, what are your best personal success stories with the law of attraction? So I can do kind of 2 that come to mind. One is kind of just a fun little story. I remember that was when I was first testing out the power of imagination. and really seeing, could I bring things to life? Just random little things with my imagination. And I imagined picking up a golf ball and just seeing a golf ball and just having it in my hand. And I visualized that 2 or 3 times. And then, this is a few years back, I went to take my dog for a walk. Well, actually it was my ex-girlfriend's dog at the time. And I took her to this park every day. And there were never any golf balls at this park, nor sporting equipment. It was just this park where dogs went, where people went for runs, etc. And I remember playing with my dog at the time, just running around. She was a little chihuahua. It was really fun. And I remember hiding from her, and I ran to hide behind this post at the park. And when I hid, I kind of leaned down and was hiding behind this post. And as I leaned down, there was a golf ball literally at the corner of my feet. I have no idea how I got there, who was playing golf there, and it happened within the day. I imagined having a golf ball. I picked it up in my hand and I was like, wow. So that was a cool story. The other, probably bigger use of the law of attraction, once I manifested a well-paying IT job despite not having a degree. That was kind of funny how I found myself in this environment in which everyone was qualified. I had no idea what I was doing, and somehow I got this job and I didn't even have to interview for it. That was a cool one that I kind of put out there a few years back as well. Probably the most profound one was when I was launching this channel, and I really wanted to share these ideas, share spirituality, make a positive difference in people's lives as kind of a coach, as a teacher, a mentor type of thing of what I'm doing right now. And I remember writing down a set of beliefs about this life, that I was free as my own boss, I was earning X amount of money every day, I was feeling joy, happiness, I was helping people, I was receiving positive comments around the world, I had this, that, and there was a bunch of things. And at the time I wrote them, it was like, this is never going to happen. So I made a tape out of this. I was listening to this tape. I was visualizing about this for several months. And then I just kind of stopped doing it because I actually I went through my breakup at about the 3rd or 4th month of being involved in this. So I just kind of, when I was going through my breakup, I just stopped trying to actively expand my channel. I just kind of let it go, and I was dealing with more healing. And then several months later, I was sharing with a client my process of doing this. And they said to me, seems like everything came true. And then it struck me, what did I write again? What did I put out there to the universe, or maybe a year ago, that I felt like was so out there? I had no channel, no videos, nothing when I first wrote it. And then I realized everything had come true on that, and it just hit me, and it was just such a profound feeling of joy that I realized that I'd taken it so for granted, and it was just so casually, everything in my life had changed. And I moved out of a full-time job into living this life of freedom, of helping people. Now all of a sudden 10,000 beautiful souls have subscribed to my channel, you being one of them. So that was probably one of the most meaningful, bigger picture manifestations that came to life through energy, intentional focus, and just the passing of time, and it all sort of unfolded. So that by far, because I had so much passion in what I'm doing, was one of the most significant success stories for me. The irony is, I use law of attraction to teach about law of attraction on YouTube. Well, at least I'm getting into spirituality now, so there's a little bit of variety, but there's a bit of an irony, but it was so meaningful for me. Okay, next question. What are some challenges, setbacks you've been facing recently, and how do you deal with them using spirituality and law of attraction? So I'd say aligning my life with truth and love, which to me are one and the same thing. So this is more of a spiritual idea. You open up this dimension to life. You realize that at the core of who you are and every soul and human you interact with is love. It's like a spiritual divine love. And as you taste that experience, you want to not only share it with everyone, but you want to live in alignment with that, with these higher values, to be a person that adds goodness and positivity to the world. And you find that actually that can be a challenge, because you've got a business to run, relationships to run, just common everyday activities. You're balancing all of life and trying to align it more and more with that sense of integrity that you're living with this higher ideal, which for me is love and goodness and beauty. And that can be a challenge, because not only are you kind of purifying yourself to these standards, kind of letting go of beliefs that no longer resonate with this, behaviors and habits that no longer resonate with this, even relationships, even aspects in your business. For example, not just saying yes to anything because it can make money, but saying, can I balance this with that vision of love that I have and how I want to impact humanity, etc. It's just a balancing act, and you're constantly finding what you're willing to do and what you're not willing to do, and what sacrifices you have to make and what new things you have to adopt, and just boundaries within yourself. And you're just kind of embracing this ever-growing alignment with this version of yourself. And this is, in a sense, what everyone's doing when they're evolving into their best version of themselves and their best life. You're constantly aligning, refining yourself, and purifying yourself. And sometimes it's just challenging, especially when a part of you comes up that you realize is a darker part. Perhaps there's limiting beliefs, perhaps there's fears or limiting lack perspectives that you've picked up from childhood, and all of a sudden you've got to love and heal that part of you and take forward action and set intentions to kind of break past these boundaries. And it's just a challenging state of friction as you kind of, it's like a phoenix rising from the ashes. You kind of can feel like there's this constant transformational process happening within your inner world, and your external world's constantly reflecting that. There's a whole lot of words. So a practical example was I realized that I still had lack beliefs about abundance. So as I move into sharing more of my authentic self, truths about spirituality and manifestation from my own authentic place that feels resonant to me, all of a sudden I was thinking, what if this somehow I can't make money doing this? What if everything kind of doesn't work out? I follow my heart and it kind of doesn't work out, or I'm judged for it. I've run out of resources. And there's these lack beliefs that are deeply rooted that I picked up from my childhood, and just facing those and having to heal and love that part of me that was in that state of fear around this lack of things or doubt about things working out. Just dealing with that and letting it go and realizing, there is only abundance. Feeling that alignment and then feeling and witnessing your life reflect that. But yes, I face these challenges as I'm aligning my whole life to be more of a pure divine expression of love, which is my greatest inspiration. Okay, the next question is, how did you discover the power of manifestation, and what triggered your curiosity to learn more about all of this? Well, I've always had a curious mind. I always had this sense about I was digging to find some kind of answer my whole life. Not just an answer about the meaning of life or things like that, but just clarity on what's my purpose. How can I do something that I'm passionate about, that makes a positive difference? This was constantly a focus of mine throughout my teenage life. So I was looking at society, various ways about how culture was doing certain things, and a lot of it didn't resonate with me, and I was questioning a lot and challenging a lot of things. I also started doing weird things, like when I was apparently 12 or 13, my parents told me I created a gratitude journal, and I realized, I did, and I was writing some kind of profound, simple wisdom back at that age. So I don't know, I always had this natural curiosity and personality drawn to seeking information about how reality works and what can I do about life to make sure that I'm living some kind of exciting, meaningful, happy, passionate life. And so when I came out of university, I kind of was deeply involved in personal development. I found out, Tony Robbins, there's this idea you can develop yourself, and somehow I found out about the subconscious mind, and I enrolled in a program about the subconscious mind, and I did coaching for kind of 6 months, and I enrolled to become a life coach. And somehow I just found out about all these tools and techniques bit by bit as I was developing myself. And I was also developing just habits like sleep routines, eating healthier, going to the gym, being more social, just this kind of typical, more mainstream idea of developing yourself as a person. And I just found out about law of attraction through this, and I initially was extremely skeptical about it. In fact, it took me, I remember, it was about 9 or 10 months after I found out about the subconscious mind before I actually did one of the exercises and saw the exercise through. Just because I was gathering so much information about it, and it was just really resonating with me, but I couldn't feel like I could accept it just off the bat, so I was constantly trying to find out how it worked at more and more profound levels. And so I can't explain it in some sense. I just feel like, in a sense, I was always destined to find out some of these answers. I was always destined to be curious, and it feels like part of a soul theme. Some people are like born comedians, like my brother. It's as if he's destined to be the life of the room, the center of attention, and he loves it and he just thrives and he's got such charisma. And so he's just a born performer. And I feel like in that same sense, I was a born seeker of understanding things and living in alignment and finding out principles about how to do that. And it just kind of happened that I found out about law of attraction. Okay, here's one that got asked a couple of times. What are your stress reducing practices? Okay, so currently right now, I have an interesting mix of things that help me stay centered, peaceful, present, and some of them include meditation. So this is interesting. I don't meditate every day traditionally. I do meditate every day, but it can be at any point. Sometimes I just go on a walk, for example, and I'll just meditate for 20 minutes at a park bench, and people will be walking around me and I'll just feel inspired to meditate. So I definitely recommend meditating every day. Really helps you still that mind, become more accustomed to remaining centered. Another thing I've started, and this is why I started after I read the autobiography of a yogi, is Kriya Yoga. And I've been doing that every day for over 2 months. And this is kind of where you're channeling the energy up each chakra center and kind of healing and purifying all these energetic centers. And that just has had a profound effect in just calming my energy and creating like a rhythmic flow in which I'm mindful of my body, I'm mindful of my thoughts, and I'm opening up the connection to the divine as I do this process and as the spiritual energy and potency of the practice gradually builds day by day. So I can recommend doing some kind of yoga practice, and whatever resonates with you, that helps. So I do that daily, and it takes about 30 to 45 minutes. I listen to uplifting people. This is crucial. Whatever information you surround yourself with, you tend to just become a product of that. I can't explain it. So if you're watching things that bring you stress, negativity, a sense of comparison, a sense of lack in the world, you kind of adopt beliefs that create a worldview and the experience of that. But the more you find people that speak to your heart, that convey peace, that convey abundance, that convey joy and happiness and all the qualities that you do resonate with, not necessarily saying you have to resonate with that, but I do. So I resonate with people that make me feel good, and I try and surround myself with their ideas as much as I can. That kind of bleeds into my own consciousness and helps me experience more of that in my life. So, for example, I don't watch the news, and when people tell me about the news, or when I go to someone's house where the mainstream TV is blaring and the news comes on, it's such a shock to me because it almost hurts my heart how fear-based it is and how seemingly unnecessary most of the news-based stories are. Some of it's crucial and I stay informed, but having, just watching 45 minutes of the news every day, that's going to disrupt your peace. Whereas you could put on some kind of other thing or even music, and that can welcome in peace through that source. So that's what I would recommend is, who do you listen to? What are you surrounded by? How are they making you feel? And consciously going towards those influences that only bring out peace, joy, love, and happiness, as much as you can. Now, have a variety too. I'm not saying don't listen to people that don't. I also do that as well. But I cut down that and I increase those positive influences. Finally, for stress, I take mindful breaths and I remind myself to be here now. Appreciating the here and now. Life is very simple when you just let go into the now a few times throughout the day and just take a breath. That helps a lot. Okay, next question. My God, we're only on question 6. Okay, this is going a lot longer than I thought, but that's all right. So next question. How did your spiritual awakening journey begin? Were there any significant events that led up to it? So as I was in my personal development phase, I was meditating every day, and I was also studying philosophy at university. So I was surrounded by this kind of a deeper way of viewing the world, constantly writing essays about it, pondering things. And bit by bit, I started opening up to this spiritual dimension. It happened gradually, and I started sitting at I remember I was at university and I used to be studying and looking at my laptop, and all of a sudden I just feel a little tingle around my third eye. What's going on with this? It started like that, and I was sort of, as this was happening, I was being drawn to exploring this, like, what's this about? So I started attracting in new information. It sort of just started coming into my life, whether that was YouTube videos or books. And so some of that started being law of attraction from a more spiritual perspective, which I think my gateway to that was Abraham Hicks, getting more into the energetic ideas and the ideas of vibration. Also started thinking about consciousness in profound ways. What really is consciousness? And I found out about people talking about altered states of consciousness using plant medicines, and that intrigued me. I also heard out about very spiritual, esoteric ideas like spiritual guides, spiritual awakening vlogs, started watching those, started seeing angel numbers pop up, 111, 444 all the time, just these synchronicities started happening. And month by month, week by week, I just became more and more spiritually oriented and curious. And this went on probably for years, and I was still a huge chunk of me was more, you could say, conventional, practical, scientific, and I had no real reference experience of what an awakening was, per se, just kind of more spiritual, interesting experiences and synchronicities I was having. And then one day when I was out of university for almost 10, 11 months, and I'd been working this casual job that I really loathed at the time. I really wanted to start up my own channel at this, but I just didn't have the confidence. I felt like I didn't have enough knowledge at that point. And I remember I think it was the Saturday afternoon, I was by myself, living with my girlfriend at the time. She went outside the room or something. I was laying down there on the bed, and I was feeling a sense of dread and defeat, like really hopeless feeling. Like I tried 10, 11 months to break free and do something, and none of this worked, none of this is real, and I felt, look, you can't live your dream life, it's just not going to happen. I kind of got really down like that. And some part of me just felt deep down and knowing that it was going to be okay. And with every part of me, it was like this tiny part of me, but I channeled my energy into that, and for some reason I spontaneously started chanting the word faith. And I said, faith, I have faith, I have faith. And I just remember chanting faith. All of a sudden this energy started building up in me. It was like a deep, I have faith, I'm going to break free. I have faith, there's more to life, that this is true, that there is a deeper purpose to all of this and my own unique expression. And I am going to align with that one day. It was like that kind of faith. Like, I just have faith. No reason why, just faith. And all of a sudden this moment happened that changed my life forever. And I felt this energy of love start pooling up in my heart, like an overwhelming love I've never felt before or thought was even possible that you could experience. And then in like a second, my entire heart just felt like it exploded open with this infinite love, and my whole sense of who I was evaporated from a limited self, and felt like my eyes were closed, and it felt like I went into this infinite dimension in which I was the very source of life as this profound divine love, infinite love. And it was so otherworldly, it was so transcendent, it was so pure. It's like I just cried tears of joy and ecstasy. It's unmistakable when you experience it. And it happened out of nowhere. I had no reference experience, but yet I just knew this is everything. This feeling, this state of being, this awareness is everything every human being wants in life and is at the core of every human being. Instant epiphany. Changed my life forever, and almost teary about, it took me months not to be teary about even thinking about that moment. It was so profound. And that was when I actually saw the reality of what spirituality is actually pointing to, and how it's not a belief system, it's not a made-up thing, it's actually a state of consciousness that is as realer than anything you can imagine. It just happens to be a non-physical or non-physically focused dimension of consciousness, within which all of the physicality of this life is in it, as an experience arising within this love. And I didn't actually I'm sort of speaking about it, I had some of these epiphanies, like this is the meaning of life right now. This is truth, this is divine love, this is divinity itself, this experience. I kind of had that level of insight, but it took me months and months and months to actually more fully understand what was happening to me. And what I realized, it was like this taste. It was like this preview. It was like a reward for faith and surrender at this level. And it was like here's your reward. Here's your clue. Here's your hint that you actually are right. We're going to give you this taste, this installment of love, just to keep you going. And then we're going to take it away after a number of minutes, and you're going to go back to your normal, even though I was transformed from that point, but normal state of everyday life, sober level conscious, you could say, with that reference experience now there for you, so you can keep moving forward, keep trusting, keep never giving up in that sense towards what you feel you're aligned to do as a soul. And it did take, I think almost a year after that point to start this second channel and be doing this full time. But that's when I would say I truly became spiritually evolved or tapped into this dimension, because I finally had a reference experience for it. And the rest sort of unfolded. I've had many of those awakenings and expansions of consciousness in profound ways ever since. Maybe I'll talk more about some experiences in depth, but there are many, many all the time happening. Okay, so next question, and I love this question. What does moving from 3D to 4D feel like? What the heck does that mean? Okay, so I'm going to take 3D and 4D and define them by books like The Law of One define them. So 3D equals the third density of consciousness, whereas 4D equals the fourth density of consciousness. And this happens at a collective level, at humanity, and also at an individual level. So third density is what many of us have been familiar with. It's basically the level at which ego arises. So that sense of separation, life is lived kind of through more of a fear-based, competitive, lack-based mentality, in which it's more survival-oriented, and a lot of the toxic tendencies, especially at the very early stages of third density, can arise, in which beings are violent towards each other, and all these emotions, these very dense emotions like hatred, jealousy, or even just fear and lack, all these kind of emotions are quite prevalent in the midst of this density and perspective and level of consciousness. So this is what we see most of the world at this collective point today. This is why there's so much back and forth and arguments and separation and I'm right, you're wrong kind of perspective. That's third density. And it's not necessarily a bad thing or a wrong thing, it's just a natural part of evolution of consciousness. So what happens at the higher levels of third density as we move into fourth density, individually and at our level of consciousness, right? Collective consciousness, is that sense of separation starts melting into unity. And as that happens, spiritual awakening happens simultaneously. It's the dawning of spiritual awakening, in which we realize that we may be individual expressions of life. We have our own mind, our own body, but actually we're deeply interconnected with all of life. And actually at the highest levels of our consciousness, we are one with everything. And from this recognition is the blossoming of love. And usually, generally speaking, this sense of being of service to the world, of creating unity, of connection, of community, and creating peace on earth, and seeing everyone as an aspect of yourself, rather than as a separate individual being that you're judging or that you have differences with, but rather a divine aspect of you. And literally in your perception of fourth density is that your sense of self starts being around the world. Not focalized right here, like I'm separate, but actually you start having an expanded consciousness. So your sense of self is increasingly everywhere. And as it's everywhere, there's just this recognition that there's a radiant love everywhere. Consciousness itself, the energy of life itself, is this divine love. And so you come out of this sense of separation into the epiphany that there is only this present now moment unfolding, and in that is this spontaneous expression of love continuously happening. So you see life through this loving lens. So this is the awakening of fourth density consciousness. So what does it feel like as you transition from 3D to 4D? Life becomes increasingly beautiful and joyful for its own sake. Whether you have your dream external reality or not, actually the very fabric of life in whatever situation you're in, you actually kind of attune your consciousness to consciousness itself, which means you actually tune into the very energy that makes up all physical forms. And you realize that that energy is an expression of love, beauty, bliss, joy itself. So as your consciousness attunes itself to everything in the room, and you realize you are that, life just becomes more increasingly beautiful. So that's what I would say the fourth density shift is like. And I'm still going there. I'm not saying I'm fully there. There's lots of purifying and aligning I'm still doing, but a big majority, I would say, has shifted more and more to this fourth density frequency of consciousness. All right, next question. Who were your favorite teachers and inspirations? So this is one thing, if you can know about me, is that I'm very people focused. So I find people all the time, whether that's a film star, whether that's a political leader, whether it's a spiritual figure, whether it's a contemporary writer or YouTube or anyone. I really love learning about people, learning about their character traits, and finding people that really resonate with and inspire me. I just am people obsessed. And so some key inspiring people right now for me, I wrote down a couple. Some are kind of historical figures, some are contemporary teachers, and some are even fellow YouTubers. I thought I'd give a couple of shout outs here. So I would say Abraham Lincoln, Mahavatar Babaji, Anandamayi Ma. They're some of more historical people that really resonate with me. Contemporary teachers right now, I'd say Sadhguru, Mooji, Byron Katie, Bentino Massaro, and Matt Kahn. They're some of the ones I tend to watch quite regularly at the moment in time. And then some fellow YouTubers, I would go Aaron Abke. I think he's a beautiful soul. I love his channel. Phil Goodlife, who does kind of channeling messages and messages from the universe, and he's really tapped on, amazing guy. And then, and I'm not being biased here, I would have to say one of my close friends, Nikki, who runs the channel Ascend Feminine. She's a profound source of inspiration and guidance for me on my spiritual path. And some of you may have seen the interview I've had with her. So I would say those are some fellow YouTubers that really inspire me right now and help me and have taught me many things. Okay, so this was an interesting question. I thought I'd answer it for fun because there's a bit of a story behind it, but it was, have you read the book The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho? And yes, I have. I went on a gap year to Europe right after I finished my degree, and I listened to the audiobook where it's read by Jeremy Irons, and I listened to that on Audible, and I love that book. It just spoke to the dreamer in me. No doubt spoken to the dreamer in you, the one that follows their heart. That's just something that I always feel I wish to live life by my heart, not by logic. And so that really captivated me, and there was some deep truth in the themes that unfold as the hero goes on the hero's journey. And I thought it was just beautiful and really deeply resonated and inspired me at the time. And I would recommend that to anyone who wants to start up their path towards creating their dream life, doing something meaningful and bold and beautiful. I remember that was a beautiful book, just simple and quick, and I listened to it in like 2 days while I was on European trains going across the Parisian countryside and all this kind of stuff. And yeah, I love that book, so I thought I'd answer that question. All right, next question. What's a random fact about you that you've never shared on your channel? Okay, there may be some people that know this about me, but very interestingly, as I was kind of getting into Indian spirituality and teachings this year, I also got into Bollywood and found actually quite a lot of charm and resonance with Bollywood films, and I sort of started getting into some of the actors and actresses there, and one of my friends is from India, and she loves talking to me about Bollywood, and we know some of the latest gossip and trends there, and I don't think I've ever shared that with anyone. And I would say my favorite Bollywood actors, for any people that like it, would be Deepika Padukone and Ranbir Kapoor and Shah Rukh Khan. Okay, so that's quite a random fact that I don't think I've ever shared. Next question. Am I a religious person? Well, I was in a fairly open family. Never was really pressured to be religious or had a religious tradition I had to follow. My mum was like loosely Catholic and Christian, and I actually did go to Sunday school and church every now and then. And I did get baptized and confirmed and things like that. But I never really resonated with being a fully religious person. I sort of was just not too brought up in it. I did resonate with some of it, but a lot of it I just let go, and I just was a normal, like you could say, person not really involved in any religion. And then throughout my teenage years, I became super into science, and I was like a proud atheist. That was sort of more during my darker periods where I was rejecting a lot of religion and society. And my school actually was Anglican, and we were kind of forced to do, sing hymns and things like that. And I remember being I had a lot of teenage angst back then, and I remember not singing the hymns and being like, religion's poisonous, and I liked atheist debates and things like that. That was probably a period. Oh, it hurts my heart to even say that these days, because I see the truth that religion's actually pointing to, which is divine truth. But I also love science as well. I'm not anti-science by any means, but it was more how angsty I was against religion. I went through that phase, and then I came full circle as I became more spiritual, and I started sort of, you could say, reading between the lines and finding the kernels of truth amongst all world religions and how they all holistically integrate in various ways, and just picking and choosing things that resonate with my own experience, because I want to go with my own experience first and foremost, not just believe things. And in that sense, you could say I find Jesus a deep inspiration, and some of his teachings are inspiring. Same with the Buddha and things like that. Although I would say overall I'm not a religious person. I'm a human being. I'm a soul. I'm not opposed to any belief system. I simply am here now, trusting my own experience and what I experience to be true in terms of those more profound divine truths and meanings about life. I always go by what I've experienced now, and I use everything else to just things to inspire me and point me towards that experience. And then I just simply let go of things that that I just don't resonate with. It's kind of as simple as that. And I love and encourage everyone to believe whatever is right for them. What are some of your favourite hobbies, films, TV shows, etc.? Okay, so I would say recently I've got into a bit of painting. So I did one of those paint by numbers things. It's still going. It takes quite a while. But I just sort of felt inspired to do that. I love listening to music. I'll talk more about that, question on music later. In terms of TV shows, one of my all-time favourite TV shows is The Office UK. I love Ricky Gervais, Carl Pilkington podcast that goes back years. Still love that style of humour so much. So that's probably my favourite TV show. I also love Friends. So in terms of movies, I love any movie that has a life-affirming message that inspires me. In terms of like dramas, I like a lot of historical films like that, where you go on a journey with the character and the world really comes alive and it's kind of immersive and you feel inspired. Like those type of films. And then I'm also a bit cheesy. I like a big romantic, so I like rom-coms. It's Complicated is one I watched recently. I love that film. I also love comedy films, like Ben Stiller films, such as Starsky and Hutch, Meet the Parents, Meet the Fockers. I love that kind of comedy. I would say that. And I also love to take walks to parks. I probably go to a park every day, and I just love being amongst trees and nature, sitting on park benches, meditating, just listening to music at the park, things like that. It's one of my favourite hobbies and things to do. Okay, the next question. What's some simple life advice that you'd give to another person? I'd say love yourself, trust what feels good for you, don't compare your journey to anyone else, follow your heart, be lighthearted as you can, make jokes, have humour, and know deeply that everything is always and can only work out for you in your life. and that there's infinite abundance, infinite possibility, and it always has a happy ending for all of us, for every soul. We're all in this together. Okay, next question. Do you ever feel like you need to be stern with your inner child / ego instead of being loving towards it? So I would say some people may resonate with that. A more strict, rigid approach, kind of like being a disciplinary type of parenting style or something like that. For me, that doesn't resonate, and I don't do that. But it's also not to confuse love with only being a pushover or only being kind of ooey gooey. Sometimes love means simply holding space with dignity and integrity, and knowing that if the inner child's arising with emotions, if all these thoughts are playing out, it's more of a loving capacity to be there for something, which doesn't necessarily mean condoning or believing what the ego is saying or doing. So if the ego is in a tantrum saying, this shouldn't have happened, you're wrong, or this person's wrong or bad, and all these kind of things, it's really angry or saying terrible things to you or life or something like that in a dark episode, it's not loving to say, I believe you, I'm going to be a pushover towards you, but to hold that space and simply say, I love and appreciate you sharing with me. I don't believe it, but I'm here for you unconditionally. Love is sometimes an expression in that sense, where it's more a boldness, a firmness, a supportiveness that is unshakable without being rude or critical. So it's just a fine line between that. And sometimes love means nurture, pure support, pure giving, pure compassion, pure kindness. And so you've got to find what works for you, but realize that the domain of love, loving treatment of that aspect of yourself as you heal, integrate the ego, the inner child. Love has a spectrum and threshold by which it can be expressed, and ultimately you've got to kind of work out what works best for you, what approach. But for me, I would never criticize or say I want to kill my ego or gang up against my ego or deny it or be ashamed by it. Because I tend to have found that approach to ego in my own life, at least, is more ego itself. Under the guise of being that higher consciousness aligned aspect of me, it's actually yet another part of me that arises attacking itself, more ego attacking itself, and is yet another part of me that deserves that loving treatment from that truly aligned high aspect that is closer to my alignment and identity as divine love in form, or you could say as your higher self in form. So in short, my answer would be, I am always loving to my inner child, as much as I can at least, but that love has a spectrum which can be firm, which can also be soft, and everything in between. So use your own life experience to find the right method and balance for you. Even if that does tend to be the stricter approach, sometimes that might resonate. And so be open to what's your truth. Okay, the next question is, God, I'm running out of energy. What would you do now if you weren't on YouTube? Well, I can tell you what I have tried to launch myself, different careers, that never worked out. So I remember I tried to be an entrepreneur. At one stage, I tried to launch an app and a traditional business, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and that didn't work. Drew up a big business plan, tried to get it going, and it just fell away because I wasn't aligned with it. I then had a brief period where I got super into calisthenics, which is like working out with a bar, and I wanted to be a calisthenics athlete where you kind of get shredded by using your own body weight and share health tips with people. I did that for a few months and actually built maybe like a tiny following on that, a bit of momentum, and then that fell away because it wasn't right. And then I tried to be an actor. I properly tried to be an actor because I did some acting in school plays during high school, and people said I was pretty good. And so I tried to get into acting. I managed to get an agent. I did some extra work, and I even appeared in an Australian TV show in a film that went on the cinemas in Australia. I did that for a whole year, and then the whole industry just didn't resonate with me more importantly, I think I spent more time trying to build my career than actually I did acting itself and practicing my craft, so my heart probably wasn't in it. So I tried to do that, and I have some funny memories from that kind of year where I tried to do acting. I think that was back in 2015 when I did that, so I can tell you what hasn't worked, but on the whole I feel I'm more and more aligned with my soul's purpose, which is in sharing these ideas and sharing spiritual truth as well, and that's more blossoming more and more with each week and day. When something keeps showing up, how do you know it's a life lesson that's here to just test you, or your fate forever? So I would say simply, it's your free will to decide what's your truth. Generally speaking, most of us would feel, if we're in a non-preferred life situation, externally speaking, or even internally, to see that as our destiny that we're trapped in forever is disempowering and generally not what is preferred. And it's simply a belief or perspective, and that will actually perpetuate a reality in which that is the case. Whereas if we believe it's only a phase, a transient phase with some crucial lessons that we're doing our best to evolve and learn from, and as we do, we will simply be liberated out of that reality at the perfect time into some kind of beautiful dream reality in all ways. Well, that's a valid perspective too, and that will create that reality. So it all rests on what's your truth and what do you wish to believe in with your free will, and you will start manifesting that reality. So it's up to you to decide what perspective you want to be involved with. In saying that, I do also feel that experientially many of us seem to have this sense that we are fated or are destined to express our life in certain ways. But actually, this destiny, we could say soul theme or soul blueprint, we actually chose that before we incarnated into this life. And so we did choose it at a higher level of our consciousness before we incarnated. And so in that sense, it still was chosen by our free will. It's still our ultimate desire. And it's something that you will resonate with in this life. So it's a win-win-win. So even the areas of your life you do feel is like part of your fate or your destiny or your purpose, your calling, something that's your truth that you resonate with, whether that's a career, a purpose, a talent, a certain relationship you like, a certain way of being you like to live it, and you feel this is who I am. This is almost like a blueprint tattooed into my soul in this life at least. Well, perhaps that is part of your destiny, but even still, within that unfolding process, it's just a theme. You have so much free will and expressive capacity within this theme unfolding. So in that sense, you're still free, and you've even chosen it with your free will at a higher dimension of your own consciousness itself. You could call this your non-physical consciousness, your higher consciousness, your higher self, whatever you want to call that comes into this mind, body, spirit, or soul here on earth. That's also you choosing that. So you're always free, and you always have free will, and whatever destiny you feel like is part of your soul's expression, it'll actually be what brings you your highest joy anyway. All right, moving on to the last couple of questions. What do you think of the Law of One? So this is the Ra material. This was channeled and it's become popular. Actually, Aaron Abke has some great videos on it. So does Bentinho Massaro from several years ago. And I've read, I think, the first few of the books, and so much of it resonates with me. And some of those ideas are that we are a soul that incarnates through several lifetimes, going on an evolutionary journey back into recognizing who we truly are, which is divine love. And so as we merge through this soul evolutionary journey, we merge back into our source self over many, many lifetimes. So all of that resonates with me. What I will say is that they're also very convoluted and complex, and they tend to encourage a lot of academic, analytical style thinking, which for me is something that I'm transcending to a degree and seeing is actually a trap, which separates you from the heart of the ideas, the love behind the message being conveyed in some of these works. And so based on how intelligent this entity called Ra is, it can kind of boggle our minds and keep us rooted in analyzing it. Whereas I believe if we were to experience life as what the entity Ra would experience, it would be more simply being as love, spontaneously, effortlessly, knowing these truths that are shared in these works. And I'll also say, I believe there are infinite timelines. So some of the events that are described in the Ra material, such as the ancient Egyptian cultures and contacting them and building the pyramids, I think that's all really amazing and cool and also resonates. But I also think to a degree it's only one timeline potentiality they're describing, one version of the past, rather than the only thing that ever happened. You know, other channelers like Bashar, they'll talk about how there's infinite timelines and possibilities and alternate realities and histories, like a reality in which JFK never got assassinated, etc. And what's the collective planet Earth experiencing in that reality? And so all these mind-bending ideas. So with Ra and in the Ra material, Law of One, you hear a lot of these kind of stories about things that perhaps only happened in a timeline of reality and not others. So you just got to kind of take it all with a grain of salt and then ground it back in your own experience and what it's really for in your life, your incarnation. I love it on the whole though, and I'm so happy that this kind of information's being shared to a more mainstream audience. It's fantastic and ultimately a highly benevolent thing in my mind with so many things that resonate with me. But I recommend either reading them, watching Aaron Abke's YouTube series on them, because they're some of the best I've found, and also Brian Scott. He has several videos on Law of One, which you can check out as well. All right, what does my daily writing practice look like? So do I do gratitude, journaling? Do I write about my vision? Do I do scripting, etc.? So for several years, I used to every night write something I was grateful for and 3 wins for the day. And I kept this up quite religiously for months and months. Every day I wrote something I was grateful for that day. And I have little mini books filled with all this stuff day after day. And at some point I found that super valuable, and then I just outgrew it. And now I don't do any specific daily writing practice. Just whenever I feel like expressing something, I will journal that out, or I'll go on a walk and I'll just speak it out and kind of contemplate it. And then I also use journaling to self-inquire about the nature of who I am, kind of Rupert Spira type of questions, or Muji questioning, if you're familiar with that, where you use it to contemplate spiritual truths. I journal about that. And then very occasionally I'll do scripting, or I'll write out intentions about what I wish to create in my life, such as with my new house, getting clear about what kind of house do I want to move to, writing that all out and scripting about it. I'll do that occasionally too. But I'd say my writing practice is quite informal. And in terms of my vision, I'm pretty clear on what my vision is these days. And I have a desire tape set up that's all around the sentences I wrote around that from many months ago. And so I listen to that every day instead of actively writing about it. But whatever you resonate with, I think writing something every day is a beautiful way to connect with yourself, and can be truly valuable at changing your perspective, making you a more positive and grateful person. And that starts attracting in a life of that quality. So it's beautiful. And there's also some older videos I did where you can use it to release limiting belief via Byron Katie's process of the work. I have an old video on how to release limiting beliefs, where you can see how I sometimes journal using that technique too. Okay, last but not least, we're nearly getting there on this big Q&A special. So this one's about music, and I wanted to answer this because I just love music so much, and I think it's a bridge between the spiritual dimension and the kind of ego mind, and it kind of helps us come out of that mind into beingness and into tapping into these more transcendent dimensions. So I just love music. And so the question is, whose music do you listen to the most? So I have a sort of somewhat strange relationship with music in that I don't tend to follow artists per se. Some artists I do, but I tend to be a song by song basis. And I go by songs that have strong melodies. And these songs often appear in relation to what I'm dealing with in my life. So I can give you a few songs, and a lot of my favorite songs and artists are all truly uplifting, I feel. Okay, so I'll actually link these songs that I mentioned below and the artists I mentioned, so you can check out these. But some single songs that I will never grow old for me, I don't think, would be September by Earth, Wind and Fire. I love that song. Also Walking on a Dream by Empire of the Sun. And then some of my favourite artists would be Fleetwood Mac, the Beach Boys, and some spiritual artists that do mantras would be Deva Pramel, and also Snatam Kaur. I hope that's how you pronounce her name. I've never truly known, but I love her. I'll link some of those songs below. And then maybe you'll know it. It's an Australian band, but I think they're awesome, and they're Sticky Fingers. So they're some of my favourite artists and a couple of my favourite all-time songs. So it chops and changes, but generally anything with a strong melody that makes me feel good, I'll get obsessed with that song for a while. All right, that's it. They're all the questions for this Q&A. I know it went for a long time. I'm actually super surprised at how long it took me to answer some of these questions, being my first one. And I also received a lot of questions that were more about practical techniques with manifestation, with spirituality, and it's kind of inspired me to consider doing maybe a weekly Q&A on some of your questions. So maybe let me know if you think that would be a good idea in the comments below. But if not, I hope you enjoyed this special Q&A. Thank you so much for subscribing to my channel, and we're celebrating 10K, so truly grateful for your presence and to hear from you in every video, especially those that leave me comments all the time. It means the world to me, and I love connecting with you. I love building a community around love, around positivity, around creating the life you want through all these principles and ideas. So creating your dream life. I love it. So thank you so much for listening and sticking around. If you'd like to have some one-on-one coaching with me, that's 100% donation based. Check the link below, and I'll see you for more normal videos soon. Thank you.